step off the land now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Hello everyone. Today we are going to see about how the ISRO was formed and the achievements that made ISRO famous. The Indian Space Company was started in 1920s with scientist S.K. Mitra conducting some experiments related to space. Later, scientists like C.V. Raman contributed scientific principles for space research in India. The idea of organizing these scientists and to create the space agency was started by Vikram Sarabhai, who is called as the father of Indian space program, and Homi Bhabha, who is called as father of Indian nuclear program. When the Soviets launched Sputnik on 4th October 1957, many countries wanted their name to be in space and worked towards it. Considering India, in 1962, the Indian National Committee for Space Research, also known as INCOSPAR, was started. On 21st November 1963, INCOSPAR launched its first sounding rocket named as Nike Apache, supplied by NASA. This launch has a famous story, as we would have seen how the scientist Vikram Sarabhai and his fellow mates like APJ Abdul Kalam carry the rocket parts in bullock carts and cycle. The launch center was chosen to be a church in Tumba, which is a small town in Kerala. The scientists successfully launched the sounding rocket and India entered into the space agency's list. With the permission of the church head and also the people living there, the launch place became as Tumba Equatorial Rocket Launching Station, also known as TERLS, and was later named as Vikram Sarabhai Space Center on behalf of the great scientist Vikram Sarabhai. So this is the short story about ISRO's first space launch. Later, on 1969, the INCOSPAR was changed into Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO. Following the launch of the sounding rocket, ISRO made many experiments and they manufactured their first satellite named as Aryabhatta. It was launched on April 19, 1975 on board Russia's C-1 Intercosmos rocket. The Aryabhatta was a great success and it became ISRO's first satellite launched successfully. Later, they also launched a satellite called Bhaskara using the same Russia's rocket. These two satellite series was a great success for ISRO and it made world countries turn around them. Now India were in a demanding situation where they needed to manufacture their own launch vehicle. So, ISRO started developing its own launch vehicle named as Satellite Launch Vehicle SLV series. They also started manufacturing their satellites for the SLVs and were named as Rohini satellites. After completing the task, the SLV's first launch took place on 10th August 1979, which was unsuccessful. But further, 3 launches took place, making attempts to place the Rohini satellites or RS-1, D-1 and D-2 in orbit between July 18, 1980 to April 17, 1983. All these 3 launches were successful and Rohini satellites were placed into orbit successfully. After the launch of the Rohini satellites, the Satellite Launch Vehicle series or SLVs were retired. The next event in the development of ISRO was the manufacturing and designing of Augmented Satellite Launch Vehicles, also called as ASLV series. The ASLV rockets were 24 meter tall and used solid propellant stages. The ASLV rockets were used to launch the ISRO satellites made by India. The abbreviation of ISROs is nothing but Stretched Rohini Satellite Series. A total of 4 launches took place using the ASLV rockets and out of which 2 were successful. The next most successful stepstone in history of ISRO was the development of PSLV rockets. PSLV means Polar Satellite Launch Vehicles. Most of our first decisions may become unsuccessful. The same applied to ISRO when they launched their first PSLV rocket on September 20, 1993, which ended up in a failure one. So the first successful launch of the PSLV took place on October 15, 1994, launching an Indian remote sensing satellite IRS-P2 into the orbit. A total of 50 launches took place using the PSLV and 47 of them were successful. The PSLV mainly consists of 3 variants and all these 3 variants have a minimum payload capacity of 1200 kg to the GTO, which means geosynchronous or geostationary transfer orbit. Now let us talk about the main features of the PSLV rocket. The Polar Synchronous Launch Vehicle has a cost per launch of about $28 million. It consists of 4 main stages with strap-on boosters. The boosters gave a thrust of about 719 kN and used fuel HTPB, which means hydroxyl terminated polybutadiene. India is also like SpaceX. They use their own engine brand called as Vikas. The first stage of the PSLV is called as PS1 and uses S139 engine. The fuel is same as the boosters, which is HTPB, and carries about 138 tons of fuel. The first stage produces a thrust of about 4800 kilonewtons. The second stage is called as PS2 and uses Vikas engine to it. It carries about 41.5 tons of fuel, which is unsymmetrical dimethyl hydrazine UDMH and N2O4, which is dinitrogen tetroxide. The second stage produces a thrust of about 799 kN and is a liquid propellant engine. The third stage is called as PS3 and uses 7 tons of HTPB solid propellant. It produces a thrust of about 240 kN and uses a S7 motor. The last and the final stage of PSLV is called as PS4 and uses 2.5 tons of monomethyl hydrazine MMH and mixed oxide of nitrogen MON as its fuel. These two fuel produces a thrust of about 14.4 kN. The final stage is the one which carries the payloads to its desired orbit. The latest launch using this launch vehicle took place on December 11, 2019, launching a research satellite into the orbit. The famous launches by ISRO using the PSLV was the launch of India's first lunar orbiter Chandrayaan-1 on October 22, 2008 using PSLV XL variant. And the next launch using this was the launch of Mangalyaan or Mars Orbiter mission on November 5, 2013 using the same PSLV XL variant. This made India the first space agency to orbit Mars in its first attempt, and the budget of the Mars Orbiter mission or Mangalyaan is about $73 million, which is less than that of the movie Gravity, whose budget is about $100 million. So this is a great thing about ISRO, as they are very cost efficient and also concentrated on their launches. The next flagship rocket by ISRO is called as GSLV, which is nothing but Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle. The GSLV consists of 3 variants named as Mark 1, Mark 2 and Mark 3, where Mark 1 is not in use and Mark 2 and Mark 3 is a medium lift launch vehicle. Medium lift launch vehicles are nothing but rockets whose payload capacity is between 2000 kg to 20,000 kg. The GSLV Mark 2 has a payload capacity of about 2500 kg to the geostationary transfer orbit, which is used to carry communication satellites like INSAT to the orbit. The GSLV Mark II is a 3-stage rocket. The most heavy lift capable rocket of ISRO is called as GSLV Mark III. It has a payload capacity of about 4000 kg to the GTO and is a 2-stage rocket with some boosters. The core stage is named as L110 and consists of 2 Vikas engines with 110 tons of UDMH, which is nothing but unsymmetrical dimethyl hydrazine, and N2O4 dinitrogen tetroxide as fuel. These are liquid propellant fuels and it gives a thrust of about 1500 kN. The boosters used here are 2 S200 solid boosters manufactured by the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center. It uses 205 tons of HTPB fuel and gives a thrust of about 5100 kN. The cryogenic upper stage of GSLV Mark III is called as C25 and uses CE20 engine with 28 tons of liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen as its fuel. It gives a thrust of about 200 kN. The GSLV Mark III was the launch vehicle used in the Chandrayaan-2 mission launched on July 22, 2019 and was also used to test the crew module of ISRO on December 18, 2014. ISRO has said that the GSLV Mark III will also be used on the Gaganyaan mission, which carries humans to space, and also for many other future missions of ISRO. ISRO has started developing their reusable rockets named as RLV, and the RLV-TD program, which is nothing but Reusable Launch Vehicle Technology Demonstration, completed its first atmospheric test flight on 23rd May 2016 and it is under development. The ISRO is also developing scramjet technology. So this is how ISRO became one of the most famous and successful space agencies in the world. Their most recent and famous launch was the launch of a lunar orbiter, lander and a rover under the Chandrayaan-2 mission. Since the lander and rover is said to have an unsuccessful landing, ISRO has also planned to launch Chandrayaan-3 mission. So that's it about the Indian Space Research Organization. and thank you for watching. So see you later. Bye bye. Cheers.